right there for Tobias Harris. Same exact play.
George rises in the mid-range, and 30 years ago I learned a lot about the game watching you and Marv. Whistle and a foul stops the clock. For the Clippers, Leonard attacks, passing up a wide-open three, gives to George for the deep three. Tells Ty Lue that the players, when they work with him, they're taking their vitamins, but as Paul George gracefully glides to the rim.
Picked up by Kawhi, and here comes George by point of 8. 5 on the shot clock. Jackson will get it off to George. On George, always rebound. Zubac back to George.
George has been dealing with a toe injury. George flips it up and rolls around and drops.
Give a burst of energy throughout the entire season.
Paul, by the way, that challenge was unsuccessful. Paul George comes right back, stays aggressive.
No, I'm not gonna. No, I never took the basketball away.
And everybody talks about it. Coaches, players, front office.
Thanks for Paul George is aware. Pulls up just below the elbow, and
Paul George couldn't get over it.
Last time we saw Pat Beverly was March 11th as Paul George 6 from the field. George for 3. I mean, their shot.
Because they said he was a professional. He had received money playing over in Turkey. And he said
with a dozen for 3. Paul George leads the way with George. It's a screen from Patterson. Flings a 3, and it is all plenty of time. Batum into Patterson, followed by Paul George. And one of the big deadline for Denver.
Dallas is really playing well right now.
Game spot time on the clock. George zigs and zags his way down the lane, slices through the defense, the stampede the other way. George comes back and flings a 3. Minute restriction is 20. Zubac's inside. Late on the clock for George. A contested 3. Oh, it is.
Long injury to his knee. Screened by Zubac. Beverly kicks it outside, and the shot is right down the middle. High screen by Zubac. George with a 16-footer, and Paul George is Kawhi Leonard on top. Now they go to George. Zubac's screen. They work into Ayton as they switch. Shot clock down to 9. The Clippers so far have gone 6 of 10. George again, another 3 and another hit. Oh, George, Jackson, Rondo, Batum, and Patterson out there for the LA Clippers. George, 3, book it. Puts it up and in.
For the Suns.
Wow. In the corner, what a shot outside. Paul George hits again so well. Morris on top. Bridges is on him. George, 3, good. Paul George has points, 4 straight games, scoring well again tonight. Across the lane, Beverly, Booker tailing him. 3, George. They've also brought in Cam Johnson, the Suns have. Final 4 minutes, scooping it up and home is Paul George with 23. All out there for Phoenix. Here comes George. He's got 25. He's defended by Booker, and the lead will go to 6. George, Batum, here's a 3 by Paul George. 7-2 run here by the Clippers after the ejection. That is a 3 by Paul George.
58% from behind the three-point line, 48% all over. And there you go, talking about Paul George being comfortable filling.
Start for the Pistons. They have alternated wins over their last 8 games and 4-4. As Jackson make it George knocks. Jackson, Jim, is on pace to score 128 points tonight.
You know what? That type of information is so valuable.
Only you back the other way. George hangs inside, a feathery touch for.
Then you got to be prepared for, kind of like we saw in Houston, the same thing is that you play hard, you always give yourself a chance to win. And speaking of playing with a waltz right down the lane, I know Ty Lue, coaching staff can't be happy with the defensive effort right now by the Clippers.
Meanwhile, Paul George muscles up. He's done it throughout his entire career. Biggest lead of the game now for the Pistons. Just brimming with confidence and have all game long. George colliding with defenders. Does he beat the clock? They'll count it. Plays catch with Reggie. The seas part. Look out below. Wheels up for Paul George. Great ball movement for the Clippers. Plenty of time on the clock, but the 2-for-1 is possibly gone. George muscles up the shot. 14 total misses for the Clippers all night long. George taking matters into his own hand. Double ball fake on Plumlee, and they very quick with the trigger, regardless of the shot clock. When he catches, he's making a quick decision. Paul George.
Oh my goodness! Get down the court, get their shooters to the corners, and look for easy.
George misses on the scoop. Offensive rebound, George. Catch and shoot, Paul George.
Turn the ball over, they will make you pay, as Brogdon did on that one.
Paul George, no doubt.
And Paul George right now just making plays, getting whatever he wants.
Angle on LeVert, kicks it out. Patrick Patterson in. George lines it up. Rimming down. George uses it. They switch. George goes behind the back. Fade away. Oh! George lines it up. Bottom. Our ninth lead change, 86-85. George switching hand. Ride the hot hand. It's Paul George. The drive. Splits defenders and snakes it. Absolute show through 3 quarters of play, and they're going to open the fourth with George from
Against Virginia and Cornell Park.
Paul George on a rack attack. Back.
Pacers.
George gives it up, gets it back. George.
Knocking down the foul line, Jay. It's 5-0 Philly. Paul George, as we mentioned, has been under the weather the last few days, not COVID relief.
And everybody buying in and understanding who's doing what has been great to see.
Paul
Causing these turnovers and deflections. I mean, that's what you want.
He's bought in, there's no question, to the team.
Do it. A pin down for him just to get him, or pick and roll, a pick and pop to get him in the center of the floor and let him do his thing. Either
Rondo feeds George stepping in.
passing lane or at the dribbler, making it tough to get downhill. And then you see in the
This quarter, and he's made just about every shot he's taken here in the quarter. He's 11 of 21 now for the field.
To 5 and then back the other way. Leonard pretends to shoot the 3, finds a wide open Paul George, but he's been aggressive, firing up 3s of late. Misses there. Paul George back the other way to show it how it's done. A couple of Wildcats playing catch, and now Paul George with time on the clock rises for the triple. Dueling banjos. Towns knocks down the jumper. He is a gifted 3-point shooter. That will be a problem for the Clippers here as Paul George retaliates in a way. Clippers led by 10. George in attack mode. Off the window, no. Follows his miss and taps it home as it rolls around the...
He holds his own.
It'll be interesting to see if he can get into a winning environment in Minnesota as Paul George steps away for the 3. It is splat. Trying to get away with all that stuff. George for 3. Bucket. Paul George with 4 threes. He has 23.
Team that will play defense tonight. Upstairs! Paul George!
And then, of course, not having their best player. So they understand every game here is vitally important as George just continues 3-pointers with high efficiency.
Grant, they are 48% on corner threes, number 1 in the NBA. George, the zigzag move. Which game he would play? They're going with tomorrow against Jokic. Oh, back door! It's George.
Cleveland has an answer. McCollum with the big shot.
George drives in for the deuce. Blazers up by 6. George sizing up Hollis Jefferson. The shake. The jumper rims in for Paul George. Indifferent shot clock, the game clock winding down in the 3rd. George has to hurry. The jumper on target. Paul George with a 3. Off the mark. Here come the Clippers the other way. George pedal to the metal. Tied up. Finishes with a left hand. 12. This one for the lead. 113 to 112 Clippers.
The situation, and you cannot foul.
Down by 1. McCollum, pump, jumper, no good. It's over.